Hey guys, welcome back for another super short movie review. And today I'm going to be reviewing the movie Nope. Now, there's been a lot of hype about this movie for, I want to say it's 2023 now, so the past 3 years or so. I watched it in a movie theater, first of all, and I went into it not seeing anything on social media or anything like that. I avoided all of it. I didn't want to see any spoilers of any kind before I saw the movie. If y'all are new to my channel, then you might not know that I can't remember everybody's names and their character names. I know who I'm talking about, and I'll do my best to make sure that you guys know who I'm talking about in the story. Nope is about a family that train horses for stunts. The catalyst that starts off the story, the father dies unexpectedly from an object that falls out of the sky. And after his death, his son, OJ, is very contemplative and worried about the future of their business. It was their father that started their business, and he's worried about how he's going to secure their legacy with their father being gone. You know, he's the point of contact for a lot of these connections in Hollywood. So he's sort of struggling to step into his father's place as the owner of the business and as a leader. His sister Emerald is not as invested in the business. She's kind of doing her own thing in Los Angeles and comes out every so often to help him. When you first meet them, you kind of wonder how they ended up there in the first place. You're interested in their characters. That's something that I don't really see a lot of people talk about when it comes to this movie, the character development. I know that people get so swept up in the twists or the surprise plot, certain turns of events, but I really love the character development that I see consistently throughout Jordan Peele's films. And here is no exception. You have a brother and a sister with two distinct personalities, another main character, Angel, who I really didn't think that we were going to see very much of him, turned out to have a pivotal role to play as the story goes on. The introduction of the director, who I've seen this man in so many specifically science fiction action movies that I feel like he has an iconic presence, especially his voice. I feel like he has one of those most recognizable voices. So I think he was an excellent choice for the director for a couple of different reasons. The way the story develops is so interesting. One of my favorite genres is science fiction, mostly horror science fiction, not so much like action, although that too. As far as this storyline goes, it is very unique. There have been stories of, you know, supernatural or extraterrestrial events happening in isolated locations, in the desert, you know, of course, but not quite like this and like conceptualized in this way. In films in the past, especially ones that involve these kinds of characters, there's a formula for it, you know, recognition, action, the fallout from that action, regrouping. That's all very familiar and feels very human and feels very natural. The parallel storyline, this other main character who also experienced something quite extraordinary and traumatic. Somehow events and people are meeting at this particular moment in time. You think that it's just a coincidence until you start to see more of the backstory of this other character. His experience directly relates to the events that are occurring. I'm gonna say spoilers right here because it came out last year, but I feel like I'm cutting it pretty close for people who wanted to wait until after all the hype had died down. There is an extraterrestrial being in the story. I watched this movie, I don't know how many times, once in theaters, which I'm glad that I did just to get the full experience, because the location where the house is, which is one of the main locations, is so isolated and way out in the middle of nowhere that the sound plays such an important role in telling the story. The way that sound distorts in a location like that, where are you hearing what you think you're hearing, distance, size, scale, all of it is distorted in locations like this. You see a person call to another person and you think that they're just maybe 100 yards or so away from each other, but then they start moving to each other and you realize it's much further than that. So I like how it played with perception, and everything felt very authentic. Their reactions, the ideas they came up with, their responses to certain things, all of it felt very authentic and real. That is something that sometimes is missed in movies where you're combining horror and science fiction. It's important to have a balance. Sometimes in movies like The Mummy, which I spoke about last time, instead of sticking with more historical details or developing the characters a little bit more, they decided to jump into the supernatural and the added effect of including extraordinary characters. So here it's very grounded. The movie is long. The movie can be slow moving in certain parts, and if you have an issue with those two things, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much. When I left the movie theater, I knew that there were going to be people that hated the movie purely off of those two things. And I don't blame them. I didn't notice how long the movie was until I had left. I love the characters because they're so unusual. They're normal but unusual characters. You're getting to learn about parts of the entertainment industry that you don't see. It's giving you a glimpse into a profession that you know exists, but you may not know very much about, and the types of characters that might be there. There is the realization that there is an extraterrestrial being that for some reason is in close proximity to them. So they decide, M and OJ decide to get it on film, to record a version of it that couldn't be disputed if they brought it to the public, which is understandable. Unfortunately, quickly became clear that that was a dangerous route to take. Events start to escalate and they realize that they have a limited window in order to get this on film before word gets out, because so many unusual things are happening that are bringing in more and more attention to this area that is very isolated and remote. So they decide to try again, only this time they call in a director that has a lot of experience filming wild animals using film cameras instead of digital cameras. The fact that all of these elements came together in order for this to happen also felt like, as a member of the audience, that I was witnessing something extraordinary and special, even with the fact that there's an extraterrestrial being just harassing them at this point. and that was the other thing that I didn't really see people talk about. It is exhibiting very specific, I'm not going to say emotions because I have no idea, but it is committing actions that I think it was so creepy and so effective. Number one, the fact that it cannot talk, it cannot speak. I think that really worked in their favor. But once they started trying to lure it in and trying to get photographic evidence of it, it became clear that it has a personality. It has, I'm gonna say, emotions. And the fact that the things it did were very passive aggressive and aggressive aggressive. I know it seems weird to say that, especially the things that happen later on in the movie. Hovering over the house, throwing up on it, spitting the fake horse that they'd used to try to like lure it out there because it's bright and colorful, onto the top of the car that OJ was driving. It exhibited just enough for you to know that it's self-aware, it's very perceptive, and that it has feelings about what you're trying to do. Was so disturbing. It was so disturbing. It could have done so many other things, like could have destroyed the house, you know, to basically get rid of them. All of these things that strengthen their convictions that they have to do what they can to record this. The flashbacks, I appreciate that the flashbacks were not overly gory because they didn't need to be. We didn't need to see specifically what was happening because we could hear it with each flashback. The position of the camera changes so that we get to see more and more of the set. I have to say, that suit is one of my favorite parts of the whole movie. Him in that bright red suit with the embroidery on it, that was great. That was great. None of this stuff happens in a vacuum. So certain events you think that were kind of dragging the story out, like the kids from Jupiter's Claim sneaking in, freaking them out. Of course they did. They're not right next door by no means, but in their community they basically are. So of course they would sneak in there and do that because of M's thieving self. The fact that she took one of the horses from their display, it was like, yeah, that, and had this idea of setting it up and we're following them and, you know, they're throwing ideas back and forth. Yes, that, to me, that doesn't drag the story out. It's a part of the story. Because when all is said and done, it would be natural to refer back to all of these events. Where the story ends is where the story ends, and where it should end, in my opinion, because we don't need to see anything that comes afterwards at this point. We can make an educated guess as to what's going to happen later on. So I don't have any problems with the story ending where it ended. So I highly recommend it. I hope you guys enjoyed this super short film review. And, you know, if you guys want to check out my movie blog, eating-film.com, or my Patreon or anything else, it'll be linked in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time.